The stars had seen many empires rise and fall, but none had lasted as long as they. Valor and dominion, for 10 million years. They had spread across the galaxy like a slow-moving fire. They consumed everything in their path. 12,000 star systems bowed before them. Countless species have been crushed, enslaved, or simply erased from existence. The Dominion did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They arrived. They demanded surrender, and they took what they wanted. Emperor Kelvorix the Eternal sat upon his throne aboard the flagship. Eternal conquest. He was ancient beyond human understanding. His body had been rebuilt countless times with technology that bordered on magic. His mind held memories stretching back millions of years. He had personally overseen the destruction of more civilizations than most species could count, and in all that time, across all those conquests, he had never once known defeat. Today, his massive armada floated at the edge of a small region of space. 3,000 warships hung in the darkness like sleeping predators. Each one was a mountain of metal and weapons. Each one had enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Together they represented the greatest military force ever assembled in one place, and they were here for humanity. The humans were a young species. They had only discovered faster than light travel 200 years ago. They controlled a mere 47 star systems. Their technology, by Dominion standards, was primitive. Their military was small. They were in every measurable way insignificant. But the Dominion had a rule: every species must join. Every species must submit. And so Emperor Kelvorix had sent his Grand Herald to deliver the invitation. On Frontier Station, August 7, Admiral Helena Vance stood at the window of her office and watched the Dominion fleet. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines on her face that spoke of hard decisions and sleepless nights. She had commanded Terran Border Command for 12 years. In that time she had watched, she had waited, she had prepared, and now, finally they had come. Her aide entered the room. Admiral, the Dominion Herald shuttle has docked. He is being escorted to Conference Room 7. Vance nodded slowly. Tell him I will be there in 5 minutes. Yes, Admiral. Also, the aide hesitated. Central Command is asking for your assessment of the situation. Vance almost smiled. Almost. Tell Central Command that the situation is exactly what we expected, and we are ready. High ceilings, polished metal walls, a long table made of dark wood from Earth itself. But the Grand Herald was not impressed. He had seen wonders that would break human minds. He had walked through palaces built from crystallized starlight. This room was nothing to him. He stood 8 ft tall. His body was covered in golden armor that seemed to flow like liquid. His face was angular and beautiful in a way that felt wrong to human eyes. When he spoke, his voice filled the room like thunder. I am Vorthon, voice of the Emperor, herald of the Eternal Dominion. I bring words from His Magnificence Kelvorix the Eternal, Master of 12,000 stars, Conqueror of thee. I know who sent you. Admiral Vance said calmly. She sat down at the table and gestured to the chair across from her. Please sit. Deliver your message. Vorthon's eyes narrowed. No one had ever interrupted his introduction before. For a moment he considered killing this woman where she sat, but that would be improper. Forms must be observed. He sat down though the chair was too small for his frame. The Valoran Dominion claims dominion over all inhabited space, he began. This is not negotiable. This is not a request. This is simply the way things are. Your species has been observed. Your worlds have been catalogued, and now your time of freedom has ended. He placed a data crystal on the table. It glowed with soft blue light. These are the terms of your surrender. You will disarm all military vessels. You will open all colonies to Dominion governance. You will provide labor and resources as required. Your leaders will swear loyalty to the Emperor. In exchange, your species will be allowed to continue existing. Most species do not receive such an offer. Admiral Vance looked at the crystal, but did not touch it. And if we refuse, she asked. Voran laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Refuse. No species refuses. Those who tried are no longer species. They are memories. They are dust. They are lessons we teach to children so they understand the price of defiance. He leaned forward and his golden armor caught the light. I have personally delivered this message to 347 civilizations. Do you know how many refused? Tell me. 12. 12 species thought they were special. 12 species thought they could fight. Do you know what happened to them? I imagine you killed them. We erased them, not just their people, their planets, their history, their names. There is nothing left of them, nothing at all. The universe has forgotten they ever existed. So I ask you, Admiral Helena Vance of the Terran Border Command, do you wish to be forgotten? The room was silent. Outside, 3,000 warships waited. Inside, a single human woman sat across from a being who represented 10 million years of conquest. And then Admiral Vance reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She slid it across the table. This is Terran Command's official response, she said. Vorthon picked up the chip and activated it. A holographic display appeared above the table. It contained only text, simple words in the Dominion's own language. The message read: request denied. You are prohibited from crossing this border. This is your only warning. For a long moment, Vorthon simply stared at the words. Then he began to laugh, not the cold laugh from before. This was genuine amusement. He laughed so hard that his golden armor shook. Prohibited, he said between laughs. You prohibit us, a species that has existed for a mere eye-link of cosmic time, a species with 47 worlds and a handful of ships. You prohibit the Valoran Dominion. Yes, said Admiral Vance. Her voice was calm. Her face was expressionless. That is exactly what I said. Vorthon's laughter died. He looked at her with new eyes, not with respect. He was incapable of respecting such a primitive creature, but with curiosity, like a scientist examining an interesting insect before crushing it. You are either very brave or very stupid, he said. I cannot decide which. Perhaps both, Vance replied. But my answer stands. You may not cross this border. If you do, there will be consequences. Consequences. Vorthon stood. His full height was terrifying up close. Let me tell you about consequences, little human. In exactly 6 hours, our fleet will cross your border. In exactly 6 days, we will reach your home world. In exactly 6 weeks, there will be no more humans. That is the consequence of defiance. That is the consequence of saying no to the Dominion. Admiral Vance stood as Well, she was small compared to him. Fragile mortal, but her eyes did not waver. Then I suppose we have nothing more to discuss, she said. Safe travels. Harold, I hope you remember this conversation. Vorthon turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold he paused and looked back. I will remember you, Admiral, when your species is dust. I will remember that one of you had the courage to look me in the eye and say, no, it will not save you, but I will remember. Then he was gone. Admiral Vance stood alone in the conference room. She touched a communication panel on the table. This is Vance. The Herald has left. They rejected our warning. Understood, Admiral. The voice belonged to General Chen, commander of Terran Strategic Operations. What are your orders? Begin protocol. Omega, activate all dimensional anchors. Move the civilian projections to standby. And Chen, yes, Admiral. Tell everyone to get some sleep. It's going to be a long week. 6 hours later, the Dominion fleet crossed the border. 3,000 warships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Emperor Kilvorix watched from his throne, already bored. With this conquest, the humans would fall. They always fell. Every species fell as the fleet crossed the invisible line that marks Terran space. Something strange happened. Every sensor on every ship went dark, not damaged, not destroyed, simply off. For exactly 3 seconds, 3,000 warships flew blind. Then the sensors came back online. Everything seemed normal. Nothing had attacked them. Nothing had changed. What was that? His technicians scrambled to find an answer. After several minutes, the chief engineer approached the throne. We are uncertain, Your Magnificence. It appears to be some kind of energy pulse. It affected all ships simultaneously, but caused no damage. Perhaps it was simply a sensor glitch. Space is strange and unexplored regions. The Emperor considered this sensor glitch. Yes, that made sense. These humans were primitive. They could not possibly have technology that could affect his entire fleet at once. It was nothing a coincidence. Continue forward, he commanded. Full speed to Earth. I want this finished quickly. Fleet moved deeper into human space, and somewhere in the darkness behind them, in spaces between spaces that the Dominion sensors could not detect, something vast and patient began to move. The trap was closing, and the Dominion did not even know it existed. 3 days had passed since the Dominion fleet crossed into human space. 3 days of travel through the void between stars. 3 days of nothing, and that nothing was starting to feel wrong. Intelligence Officer Sira stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Conquest, staring out at the stars. She was different from most Dominion officers. Her species, the Valkyrie, had been conquered 800,000 years ago. They had a gift that made them valuable. They could sense psychic residue. Emotions left marks on space itself, and the Valkyrie could read those marks like footprints in snow. Fear was the easiest to sense when a species faced the Dominion fleet. Their terror burned bright in Siret's mind. She had felt the death screams of entire worlds. She had tasted the despair of billions. It was not pleasant, but it was familiar. Here she felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no desperation, not even the faint background noise of ordinary life. The space around them was psychically empty, silent, dead, but it was not dead. The sensors showed human Colonies on nearby planets, the data said billions of humans lived in this region. They should be screaming in terror right now. They should be filling space with their fear. Instead, there was only silence. Surf turned his footsteps approached. Grand Admiral Fixerin walked toward her, his forearms clasped behind his back. He was the greatest military strategist in the Dominion, a being who had planned the conquest of over 1,000 worlds. His mind was sharp, his instincts were legendary, and right now those instincts were telling him something was very wrong. You feel it too, he said. It was not a question. I feel nothing. Surith replied, that is what disturbs me. Fexerin nodded slowly. I have studied every species we have ever conquered. I know how prey behaves. They run, they hide, they fight, they beg. They do something. He paused, looking out at the empty stars. The humans have done nothing. They said no, and then they simply stopped. Perhaps they fled to where we control the routes out of this region. Our scouts have found no refugee fleets, no evacuation ships, no mass exodus. The Admiral's voice was troubled. They are still here somewhere, but they are not acting like prey. Then what are they acting like? The Xoran was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They are acting like predators, waiting in ambush. The thought hung in the air between them. It was ridiculous. Of course, the humans were primitive. Their technology was inferior. Their military was tiny. They could not possibly be a threat to the Dominion fleet. And yet I will speak to the Emperor. Terran said, perhaps we should slow our advance, send more scouts, investigate these anomalies. But Sith knew even before he left that the Emperor would not listen. Vorax had ruled for 10 million years. He had crushed every enemy he had ever faced. He did not believe in caution. He did not believe in fear, and that she realized might be the most dangerous thing of all. The Emperor did not listen. Anomalies. Vorax laughed from his throne. Empty sensor readings. Silent. These are not threats, Admiral. These are the signs of a beaten enemy. The humans know they cannot win, so they hide like rats in a burning building. We will find them. We will crush them. This is not complicated. Theron stood before the throne, his 4 hands clenched tight. He had served the Emperor for 300,000 years. He had never questioned an order. But now something in his gut was screaming at him to turn the fleet around. Your Magnificence, I have never seen a species react this way in all my experience. Your experience is not needed here. The Emperor interrupted. What is needed is obedience. We will continue to Earth. We will destroy their home world. The matter is closed. Sire, please. Something is wrong. The colonies we have scanned appear abandoned. Our scout ships have gone missing. The silence is not natural. It feels like what? Fexerin hesitated. Then he spoke the words that had been building in his mind for 3 days. It feels like a trap, sire. The throne room went quiet. Every officer, every guard, every servant froze. No one spoke to the Emperor this way. No one questioned his judgment. No one suggested that he might be walking into danger. Vorax rose from his throne. He was tall, even by Dominion standards. His body had been engineered for war over millions of years. His eyes burned with cold fire. You believe that a species of primitives, a species that has existed for a mere heartbeat of time, has somehow trapped the greatest military force in galactic history. I believe something is not right. I believe we should. You believe we should. Show weakness. You believe we should. Turn back because of empty space and missing scouts. You believe we should. Fear creatures who are beneath us in every way. No, sire, I simply grand. Admiral Fexerin, the Emperor and LT Unk and GT. Voice was ice. You have served me well for 300,000 years, but fear has made you useless. You are relieved of command. Fexerin stared at the Emperor. Sire. Guards, execute him. It happened fast. The guards moved forward. Fexerin did not resist. He stood tall as the energy. Weapons discharged, and then he was gone. 300,000 years of experience and wisdom erased in an instant. The Emperor sat back on his throne. Commander. Rikala, you are now Grand Fleet. Commander, do you have any concerns about our mission? Rikala stepped forward. She was young by Dominion standards, only 50,000 years old. She had risen quickly through the ranks. She was smart, she was ambitious, and she was not foolish enough to repeat the Sauron's mistake. No, your magnificence, we will reach Earth within 3 days. The humans will fall. Good. Continue our course. But as Arzala returned to her station, she caught Cyrus's eye. The intelligence officer was pale, shaken, and in that moment, Rixala understood that Dexeron had been right. Something was very, very wrong. The next 2 days were worse. 3 scout ships were sent ahead to investigate a human colony. They reported that they were approaching the planet. They reported that they were entering orbit, and then they simply stopped transmitting. No distress calls, no final messages. They were just gone. More anomalies appeared. Navigation logs showed that ships had traveled distances that did not match their fuel consumption. Time readings differed between vessels, sometimes by hours, and at the edge of sensor range, strain. Energy signatures flickered and vanished like ghosts. The crews grew nervous. Whispers spread through the fleet. Some said the humans had dark technology, weapons that could make ships disappear. Others said the region was cursed, haunted by the ghosts of species the Dominion had destroyed. A few said nothing at all. They simply stopped talking, their eyes hollow with a fear they could not name, and still the silence continued. No human ships challenged them. No human stations fired upon them. No human voices demanded their retreat. The entire species seemed to have simply vanished. On the morning of the 6th day, the fleet finally reached their destination, Earth, the home world of humanity, the center of their tiny empire. The planet hung in space, blue and green and white, just like the records showed. The moon orbited quietly nearby. Everything was exactly as expected. Except for the silence, Earth should have been buzzing with signals. 8 billion humans live there according to Dominion intelligence. 8 billion creatures generating communications, broadcast data transfers, all the noise of a technological civilization. Instead, the planet was quiet. The city showed on sensors, but no signals came from them. No ships launched from the surface. No orbital stations hailed the fleet. It was as if everyone had simply stopped. Rikala stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, staring at the silent world. Her hands were shaking, though she tried to hide it. Full scan, she ordered. I want to know what is happening down there. The sensors swept the planet. Life signs were present but faint. Power sources were Active but minimal, everything seemed to be running on standby like a house, where all the lights were on but no one was home. Could they have evacuated? One of her officers asked. To where? We have seen no ships, no transports. No, she stopped. Every screen on the bridge flickered, every sensor display went blank for half a second, and then, for the first time since they had crossed the border, the Dominion fleet received an incoming transmission. It came from behind them from the space they had already traveled through, from the empty void they had crossed for 6 days. Rekala felt ice form in her stomach. Put it through. The message appeared on the main screen. It was text only, simple words in perfect Dominion script. 3 words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. You were warned. And then space itself began to tear apart behind the fleet. In the darkness they had thought was empty, light exploded. Thousands of energy signatures appeared where nothing had been before. They emerged from tears in reality, from folds in space that should not have existed, from dimensions that Dominion science said were impossible. The humans had not fled, they had not hidden, they had been there all along, watching, waiting, building a cage around the greatest military force in the galaxy. And now that cage was closed. Rekala stared at the sensors as they struggled to process what they were seeing. The energy signatures resolved into ships, human ships, thousands of them. They were not like anything in the Dominion's records. They were sleek and dark and wrong, as if they existed slightly outside of normal space. About everything, their technology was not primitive, their military was not small, and they had never ever been afraid. Behind her, she heard Emperor Kelvorik rise from his throne for the first time in 10 million years. His voice held something other than arrogance. It held doubt. What is this? And from the human fleet, a single transmission came through, a woman's voice, calm and steady. This is Admiral Helena Vance of Terran Command. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons are useless, and your only warning has now expired. I suggest you listen very carefully to what I say next. The silence was over, and for the Dominion, the nightmare had just begun. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Prometheus. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no excitement, no fear. They had trained for this moment for 200 years. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night had led to this. The trap was sprung. Dominion fleet was surrounded, and now came the most important part, making them understand. Open a channel to their flagship. Vance ordered. Full broadcast. All frequencies. I want every ship in their fleet to hear this. Channel open. Admiral Vance looked at the view screen. 3,000 Dominion warships hung in space before her, each one a mountain of destruction. Behind them, the Terran fleet had emerged from dimensional folds, technology that the Dominion had never imagined. The humans had been there all along, hidden in spaces, between spaces, watching the invaders walk deeper and deeper into their territory. This is Admiral Helena Vance of Terran Command, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. Your fleet is surrounded. You have entered a controlled engagement zone. Your weapons will not function as you expect. Your shields will not protect you, and your only path to survival is to listen carefully to what I say. On the eternal conquest, Emperor Kelvorik stared at the view screen. With fury in his eyes, his fleet. Surrounded, impossible, his weapons. Useless, ridiculous, this was a bluff. It had to be, fire all weapons, he commanded. Destroy them, 3,000 warships. Opened fire, the Dominion's weapons were legendary, they had cracked planets. They had burned stars, they had ended civilizations. The combined firepower of this fleet could have destroyed an entire solar system. The energy beam struck the Terran ships and nothing happened. The weapons splashed against invisible barriers and dissipated into nothing. Not absorbed, not reflected, simply gone. As if they had never existed, Kelvorix watched in disbelief. Fire again, full power. They fired again and again, and again, each time the result was the same. The Terran ships did not move. They did not dodge, they simply sat. They're untouched, untouchable. Admiral Vance let them fire for 30 seconds. She wanted them to understand. She wanted it to sink in. And when she saw the desperation beginning to spread through the enemy fleet, she spoke. Again, are you finished? Her voice was not mocking, it was patient, almost kind, like a teacher waiting for a student to stop throwing a tantrum. Your weapons use directed energy. They operate within normal spacetime. Our shields exist partially outside of your dimensional reference frame. Your weapons cannot touch us because from their perspective, we are not entirely. Here she paused, letting the words sink in. Now let me show you what our weapons can do. She nodded to her tactical officer. Single shot, target the ship on their far left flank. Minimum power, the Prometheus fired. Once the beam that emerged was different from anything the Dominion had ever seen. It was not light, it was not plasma. It was something else entirely. A ripple in reality itself. It crossed the distance between the fleets in less than a heartbeat. The targeted Dominion warship did not explode. It did not burn. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive vessel carrying 10,000 crew. The next moment there was nothing, not wreckage, not debris, not atoms. The ship had been unwritten from reality. Throughout the Dominion fleet, sensors registered what had happened, or rather, they registered what had not happened. The ship was gone. All traces of it were gone, even the space where it had been seemed slightly wrong, as if the universe itself was confused by the sudden absence. Silence filled the eternal conquest. Kelvorix stared at the empty space where his ship had been. In 10 million years, he had never seen anything like this. His weapons could not touch the enemy. Their weapons could erase his ships from existence. This was not a battle. This was not even a slaughter. This was extinction. Admiral Vance spoke. Again, that was one ship at minimum power. We have enough firepower to destroy your entire fleet in less than a minute, but we do not want to do that. We are not conquerors. We are not murderers. We simply want to be left alone. She stepped closer to the viewscreen as if she could look directly into the Emperor's eyes. I am offering you a choice, the same choice you have offered 1,000 species: surrender or die. But unlike you, I mean it when I say surrender. We will not enslave you. We will not destroy your civilization. We will simply send you home with a warning. Never return. On the Dominion flagship, Rixalo watched her Emperor. His face was twisted with rage and something else, something she had never seen in him before. Fear. Genuine, paralyzing fear. Your magnificence, she said carefully. Perhaps we should. No. Emperor and LT Unk and GT's voice was a growl. We do not surrender. The Dominion has never surrendered. We would rather die. Sire, our weapons cannot. Then we will ram them, all ships full speed ahead. Collision course. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will destroy them with our hulls. Arzala felt her blood run cold. Sire, that would kill us all. Then we die with honor. We die as warriors. We do not bow to primitives. He turned to face the bridge crew, his eyes burning with mad pride. All ships, prepare for final approach. We will. No, the voice came from Rikala. She was as surprised as anyone to hear herself speak. The Emperor turned slowly. What did you say? Rixala's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I said no, sire. I will not order our people to die for your pride. You dare. I dare because someone must. She stepped forward, and suddenly she was not a subordinate addressing her emperor. She was a soldier protecting her people. Look around you, sire. Our weapons are useless. Our ships are surrounded. Humans could destroy us all in seconds. But they are offering mercy. When have we ever offered that to anyone? The Emperor's face twisted with rage. You are relieved of command. Guards, execute. But the guards did not move. Rikala looked around the bridge. The officers, the soldiers, the crew, all of them were staring at the Emperor with the same expression. They had followed him for millions of years. They had obeyed without question, but now faced with pointless extinction. Something had changed. The fleet will not follow a suicide order, Rixala said quietly. Not today, not for pride. She turned to the communication officer. Open a channel to the human flagship. The Emperor lunged toward her, but two guards stepped in his path, not attacking, just blocking. Kilvoric stared at them in disbelief. You would commit treason. You would betray me. We would survive, sire, one of the guards said. There is no honor in extinction. Reichsala faced the view screen, where Admiral Vance waited patiently. Admiral, Rikala said. Her voice was rough with emotion. My name is Commander Rikala. I am assuming command of the Dominion fleet. The Emperor has been removed from authority. She took a deep breath. We accept your terms. What do you require of us? Admiral Vance nodded. Slowly, there was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction. Only a kind of tired relief. Stand down all weapons. Shut down all engines. Prepare to be escorted out of Terran space. Any ship that deviates from the designated route will be destroyed. Any ship that makes hostile moves will be destroyed. Follow these instructions and you will all go home alive. And the Emperor, Vance's eyes hardened slightly. The Emperor will be detained, not by us. By your own people. He has crimes to answer for, not against humanity, but against the countless species your empire has destroyed. There will be a reckoning, but it will be your reckoning, not ours. Rikala looked back at Kalorax, the immortal god. Emperor of the Valoran Dominion, stood surrounded by his own guards, his face mask of disbelief and fury. In 10 million years, he had never been defied, never been defeated, never been held accountable for anything. That era was over. Understood, Admiral Rikala said. We comply. Throughout the Dominion fleet, weapons powered down, engines went silent. 3,000 warships, the greatest military force ever assembled, sat motionless in space, surrounded by an enemy they could not fight, saved by Mercy they had never shown to anyone else. On the Prometheus, Admiral Vance allowed herself a small sigh of relief. They had done it. 200 years of preparation, of hiding, of pretending to be weak, all of it had led to this moment, and they had won without genocide, without becoming the monsters they had feared. Begin escort protocols, she ordered. Guide them to the border and send a message to Central Command. Operation Omega is complete. The Dominion fleet is contained. Her aide stepped closer. Admiral, permission to speak freely. Granted. Why did we let them live? We could have destroyed them all. They would have destroyed us. Vance looked out at the Dominion fleet. 3,000 ships full of beings who had conquered the galaxy through cruelty and force. Beings who had never shown mercy to anyone. Because we are not them, she said quietly. Because the universe has enough death. Because the whole point of being strong is that you get to choose who you want to be. They chose to be conquerors. We choose to be protectors. That is the difference. And if they come back, Admiral Vance's eyes grew cold, then we will not offer terms a second time. The Dominion fleet began its slow journey toward the border, escorted by Terran ships that could destroy them all with a thought. And as they traveled, the crews looked out at the human vessels with new eyes, not with hatred, not with anger, with something far more surprising: respect, and perhaps in some small way hope. If these humans could have power like this and still choose mercy, perhaps the galaxy was not as dark as they had always believed. 1 week after the battle that never was, delegations from both powers met aboard a space station that should not have existed. The humans had built neutral station Prometheus in 3 days. 3 days. Commander Rick Salala walked through the station's corridors and tried to understand what she was seeing. The walls were smooth metal, seamlessly joined. The lighting was warm and comfortable. The life support systems hummed quietly, providing perfect air and temperature. Every detail was precise, elegant, functional. In the Dominion, a station like this would take 50 years to construct with full resources and unlimited workers, perhaps 20. The humans had done it in 3 days, assembling it from components that emerged from dimensional folds like magic, and they acted as if this was normal. Is something wrong, Commander? The human officer escorting her, a young man with kind eyes, had noticed her staring at the walls. This station, Ricola said slowly. How did you build it so quickly? The young man smiled. We had the pieces ready. We have been preparing for a long time. How long? 200 years since we first reached the stars and realized what was out there. His smile faded slightly. We saw what happens to species that are not ready. We decided that would not happen to us. 200 years, the humans had known about the Dominion, had known about all the dangers in the galaxy for their entire spacefaring existence, and they had spent every moment of that time preparing, building weapons, developing technology, creating defenses, hiding. You pretended to be weak, Ricola said. All this time, you let us think you were nothing. We were nothing. 200 years ago, we could not have stopped a single Dominion scout ship. The young man shrugged. So we learned, we grew, we prepared, and we waited for what? For someone to come, for someone to try to conquer us. His eyes met hers. We knew it would happen eventually. We just wanted to be ready when it did. Ricksala thought about all the species the Dominion had crushed over the millennia. All of them had reacted the same way. When the fleet arrived, they had panicked, they had begged, they had fought desperately with whatever they had. None of them had simply waited. None of them had been ready. The humans were different. The humans were very, very different. The conference room was large but simply furnished, a round table, comfortable chairs, windows looking out at the stars, nothing grand, nothing designed to intimidate, just a place where people could talk. Admiral Helena Vance was already seated when Rick Sala entered. The human woman looked tired. The past week had been difficult for everyone, but her eyes were clear and sharp. She nodded in greeting. Commander, please sit. Rick Sala sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. They had been enemies. They had nearly fought a war. Now they were here to negotiate peace. It was strange. It was uncomfortable. It was necessary. Before we begin, Vance said, I want to explain something. I want you to understand why we did what we did. Rick Sala nodded. I am listening too. Centuries ago, when we first traveled between stars, we were amazed. The galaxy was vast and beautiful and full of wonders. We thought we would find friends out there, civilizations we could learn from and trade with. Vance's voice grew quieter. Instead, we found graves, empty worlds that had once held life, ruins of civilizations that had been burned to ash, and everywhere we looked we found the same story. The Valoran Dominion, the empire that consumed everything, the force that could not be stopped. She looked directly at Rick Sala. We watched your fleet destroy a species called the Velthani. They were peaceful. They had no weapons. They tried to surrender. Your emperor killed them anyway. All of them. 7 billion people gone in a single day. Rick Sala felt something cold in her chest. She remembered the Vthani campaign. She had been young then, just a junior officer. She had not asked questions. She had simply followed orders. After that, Vance continued, humanity made a decision. We would never be the Velani. We would never be helpless. We would never beg for mercy from beings who had none. We built our weapons. We hid our strength. We prepared for the day when the Dominion came for us. And when we came, we were ready. But here is the important part, Commander. We could have destroyed your fleet. We could have killed 3 million of your people in seconds. It would have been easy. It would have been safe. Many of my officers wanted to do exactly that. Why didn't you? Admiral Vance leaned forward. Her eyes were intense. Because we are not you. Because we watched the Valfani die and swore we would be different, not just stronger, different. The whole point of having power is the choice it gives you. We choose not to be conquerors. We choose not to be murderers. We choose to be better. The room was silent. Rick Sala processed the words. In 10 million years of Dominion history, no one had ever talked like this. Power was for conquest. Strength was for domination. The idea of having overwhelming force and choosing not to use it, it was strange. It was confusing. It was beautiful. What do you want from us? Rick Sala asked finally. What are your terms? Vance pulled out a data pad and slid it across the table. Our demands are simple. First, complete withdrawal from Terran space. Your fleet leaves and it does not return. Agreed. Second, a buffer zone of 50 light years. No Dominion military vessels in this region ever. That is significant territory. It is necessary. Trust takes time to build. Rick Sala nodded slowly. Agreed. What else? Third, the liberation of all enslaved species within 100 light years of our border, you will free them, you will give them their worlds back, you will leave them alone. This was harder. The Dominion had built its economy on slave labor. Freeing those species would cause chaos throughout the empire. But looking at Admiral Vance's face, Rixala knew this was not negotiable. Agreed, she said. Quietly, it will be difficult. There will be resistance, but we will do it. Finally, Emperor Kelvorix will face trial, not a human trial, a trial conducted by the species he has wronged. We will help you organize it. We will provide security, but the judgment will not be ours, it will be theirs. Arzala thought of her former emperor. He was being held on the eternal conquest, guarded by his own people. He had not spoken since the surrender. His eyes were empty, his mind seemed broken. What will happen to him? That depends on the trial, but we have made one request to the species involved: no execution. Whatever punishment they choose, it must not be death. Why? Admiral Vance was quiet for a moment. Because death is easy. Death is an ending. Kelvoric ruled through fear and violence for 10 million years. He never faced consequences. He never saw the suffering he caused. Death would simply erase him. Instead, we want him to watch what his empire changing, his victims becoming free, everything he built being transformed into something better. Vance's voice was steady. We want him to live long enough to see that his way, the way of conquest and cruelty, was not the only way. We want him to understand that he was wrong. That is a worse punishment than death. That is true justice. Arzael sat back in her chair. She had expected demands for territory, for tribute, for submission. Instead, the humans wanted freedom for enslaved peoples and justice for their crimes. They wanted the Dominion to become better. I do not understand you, she admitted. You have power we cannot match. You could rule the galaxy. Why don't you? Admiral Vance smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. Because ruling the galaxy sounds exhausting. Because we have enough problems on our own worlds without adding 1,000 more. Because the point of strength is not control, it is safety. We want to live in peace. We want to raise our children without fear. We want to explore and learn and grow. We do not want to spend our existence managing an empire. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Also, Commander, we remember what it was like to be small. Humans have not always been united. For most of our history, we fought among ourselves. We conquered and enslaved each other. We committed terrible crimes against our own species. We know what the Dominion is because we used to be like the Dominion. She turned back to face Rixala. We grew past it. We learned better. We believe you can too. There was a long silence. Then Rixala asked one final question. The fleet, we saw your ships that emerged from dimensional space. How many ships does Terran Command actually have? Admiral Vance's expression did not change. More than you saw. That is not an answer. No, it isn't. Admiral's eyes were unreadable. Let me put it this way. What you faced was our border patrol, our first response force. If the battle had continued, if your emperor had refused to surrender, reinforcements would have arrived within minutes, and they would have kept arriving for how long? Until there was nothing left to fight. The implication hung in the air. The fleet that had surrounded the Dominion, the force that had seemed overwhelming, was not humanity's full strength, it was not even close. Rekala felt dizzy. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. We are not threatening you. We are not boasting. We are simply explaining reality. Humanity does not want war. We do not want to conquer anyone. But if someone tries to hurt us, tries to enslave us, tries to destroy us, Vance's voice hardened, we have the power to ensure they never try again. We have had that power for a very long time, and we will never be victims. She extended her hand across the table, a human gesture of agreement. The terms I have offered are fair. They protect our people and give your empire a chance to change. Take them, go home, build something better, and perhaps in time we can be something other than enemies. Rekala looked at the offered hand. In the Dominion, this would be seen as weakness, submission, surrender, but Rekala was beginning to understand that the Dominion's view of strength was very limited. She took the hand. We have an agreement, Admiral. I will take these terms back to my people. We will honor them, and if some in your empire disagree, if they want revenge, Rekala's grip tightened, then I will explain the truth to them, the truth that I am only beginning to understand myself. She met Vance's eyes. There is a species out. They're more powerful than anything we have ever faced. They could destroy us with a thought, and they chose mercy. If we are wise, we will never give them a reason to choose differently, Admiral. Vance nodded slowly. That is exactly what we hoped you would understand. The negotiations were complete. The peace was made, and as Rekala walked back to her shuttle, she found herself thinking about the future. Not the Empire's future, her own. She had served the Dominion for 50,000 years. She had followed orders without question. She had been part of a machine that crushed everything in its path. But now she had seen something different. Species with ultimate power that chose restraint, strength without cruelty, victory without genocide. Maybe the Dominion could learn from that. Maybe she could help teach them. 6 months had passed since the Dominion fleet retreated from human space. 6 months since the galaxy learned that the great empire could be stopped. 6 months since everything changed. The news spread like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species whispered to each other in the dark. They passed the story from parent to child, from prisoner to prisoner, from one desperate soul to another. A species called humanity had said no to the Dominion. They had faced the greatest fleet ever assembled and refused to bow. And they had won. More than that, they had shown mercy for beings who had known only cruelty for generations. This was almost harder to believe than the victory itself. An empire that could have been destroyed had been allowed to leave. A fleet that could have been erased from existence had been escorted home. The humans had the power to become the new masters of the galaxy, and they had simply said, go away and leave us alone. The idea of it spread faster than any ship could travel, and in its wake something long dead began to stir. Hope on the throne world of the Valoran Dominion. The trial of Kelvorix the Eternal was broadcast to every corner of the Empire. The former emperor sat in a simple chair in a simple room. No throne, no golden armor, no servants or guards treating him like a god. He was just a being in a chair facing the accusations of a dozen species he had wronged. Representatives from the Valkyrie spoke of their enslavement, the Thrax described the destruction of their home. World the Aryan people thought extinct. For millennia had survivors who emerged. From hiding to tell their story, one by one species came forward to describe what the Dominion had done to them under Kael'Voric's rule. He simply sat and listened, his ancient face blank as 10,000,000 years of crimes were read into the record. When the testimonies were finished, the tribunal delivered its verdict: guilty, guilty of genocide, guilty of enslavement, guilty of crimes against consciousness itself. The sentence was not death. The humans had requested that, and the tribunal agreed. Death was too easy, too final. Instead, Kael'Voric was sentenced to witness. For the rest of his immortal life, he would watch the liberation of every species he had enslaved. He would see the worlds he had burned begin to heal. He would observe the empire he had built transform into something new. He would live long enough to see his legacy crumble and be replaced by something better. On the day the sentence was announced, Raikala visited him in his cell. She had become the leader of the new Dominion Council, a provisional government trying to guide the empire through its transformation. She was overwhelmed, but she needed to see him one more time. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Do you see what you did wrong?" Kael'Voric looked at her with empty eyes. "I did nothing wrong. I built an empire that lasted 10,000,000 years. I brought order to chaos. I made the Dominion great. You killed billion. You enslaved entire species. You destroyed civilizations that had done nothing to harm you. I did what was necessary. The strong rule, the weak submit. That is the natural order." Raikala shook her head. "The humans are stronger than us. By your logic, they should have destroyed us. Instead, they let us go. They showed mercy. How does that fit your natural order?" The former emperor was silent. "It doesn't," Raikala said, "because your view of strength is incomplete. True strength is not just the ability to destroy. It is the wisdom to know and not to. The humans understand this. We are only beginning to learn." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You will live a very long time, Kael'Voric. You will watch everything you built be torn down and rebuilt better, and someday maybe you will understand why. That is your punishment. That is your chance at redemption." She left him alone in his cell, staring at the wall, contemplating eternity. Throughout the former Dominion, change came slowly but steadily. Near the Terran border, 57 enslaved species were freed in accordance with the treaty. Terran humanitarian ships arrived with food, medicine, and technology. They helped rebuild shattered worlds. They taught skills that had been forbidden under Dominion rule. They did not ask for payment or tribute or loyalty. They simply helped, and then they left. One of the freed species, the Vellani, thought extinct for 2 centuries, had survivors. They had hidden on a remote moon, living in caves, barely surviving. When Terran ships found them, there were only 8,000 left. 8,000 beings, the last remnants of a civilization that had once numbered 7 billion. The humans did not simply rescue them. They gave them a world, a planet within the buffer zone, protected by Terran weapons where the Vithani could rebuild. They provided technology and resources. They offered teachers and advisors, and they made a promise no one would ever hurt the Vellani again. The leader of the Vellani survivors, an old female named Kira, asked the Terran ambassador a question. that had haunted her for 200 years. Why do you help us? We are nothing to you. We have nothing to offer. Why do you care? The ambassador, a young woman with dark hair and gentle eyes, smiled sadly. Because we remember, she said, long ago humans did terrible things to each other. We had our own empires, our own conquerors, our own victims. We know what it is like to be helpless, to be destroyed by those stronger than us. She took Kira's hand. When we reached the stars, we swore we would never let that happen to anyone else, not if we could prevent it. The Dominion thought that made us weak. They learned differently, but the strength we have, the weapons, the technology, the power, none of it means anything if we don't use it to help those who cannot help themselves. You could rule the galaxy, Kira whispered. You could be the new Dominion. We could, but we don't want to. We want neighbors, not subjects. We want friends, not slaves. The galaxy is big enough for everyone. There doesn't have to be an empire. There just has to be understanding. Kira looked at her with eyes that had seemed too much suffering, but for the first time in 2 centuries, those eyes held something other than despair. Can such a thing really exist? A galaxy without conquest? We don't know, the ambassador admitted. But we intend to find out, one freed species at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one choice at a time. On Earth, life continued as it always had. Children went to school, people went to work, families shared meals together. The vast military apparatus that had held off the Dominion folded back into its hidden dimensions, waiting, watching. But on the surface, in the cities and towns and villages, ordinary humans lived ordinary lives. Admiral Helena Vance retired from active duty. She had done her job. She had protected humanity. She had shown that strength and mercy could coexist. Now she wanted rest. She bought a small house by the ocean and spent her days walking on the beach, watching the waves, thinking about the future. Sometimes she looked up at the stars and wondered what the Dominion was becoming, whether the peace would hold, whether the galaxy would change. She hoped so. She had to hope so. Because the alternative, another war, another cycle of conquest and extinction, was too terrible to contemplate. One evening, as the sun set over the water, her communication device chimed. Message from Terran command. She almost ignored it. She was retired. Someone else could handle whatever crisis was brewing, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened the message. It was from Commander Ricala, the former enemy, the new leader of the Dominion Council. Admiral Vance, the message read, I hope this finds you well. 6 months have passed since our encounter, and I wanted to update you on our progress. We have freed 43 species so far. We have begun reforming our government. We have established courts to address past crimes. It is difficult. Many resist change, but we are trying. Vance read on. I have a question for you, the same question I asked when we parted. Would humanity consider an alliance with the Dominion? Not today. I know trust must be earned, but someday. Is it possible? Vance stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a reply. Commander Rixala, thank you for the update. The progress you describe is encouraging. As for alliance, that decision is not mine to make anymore, but I can tell you this: the door is open. It has always been open. When you are ready, truly ready, walk through it. We will be waiting. She sent the message and put the device away. Then she returned to watching the sunset, thinking about all the beings across the galaxy who might be watching their own sunset free for the first time in millennia. At the border of Terran space, a new marker floated among the stars. It was a simple structure, a metal beacon broadcasting message in 1,000 languages. Human ships had placed it there, but Dominion crews had helped with the installation. It was a joint project, a symbol of the new reality. The message was simple, direct, clear. Beyond this point lies Terran space. The humans asked only to be left in peace. We, the Valoran Dominion, advise all travelers to honor that request. We did not, and we learned what the humans already knew. The most dangerous species in the galaxy is not the one that conquers, it is the one that has the power to conquer and chooses not to until it must. Approach with respect, leave with wisdom, and remember, mercy is a gift. It is not always offered twice. Ships from across the galaxy would pass this beacon in the years to come. Some would read the message and continue on their way, curious about the strange species that had humbled the Dominion. Others would stop and stare, trying to understand how such a thing was possible. And some, the wise ones, the ones who had been watching the galaxy change, would read the message and feel something stir in their hearts. Not fear, not envy, hope. Hope that there was another way. Hope that strength did not have to mean cruelty. Hope that the endless cycle of conquest and extinction could be broken. The humans had proven it was possible. They had shown that a species could be powerful and kind, strong and merciful, dangerous and peaceful. Now the rest of the galaxy had to decide what they would be. The new dawn had arrived, and its light was spreading one star at a time across a galaxy that had been dark for far too long.